Marcus, I am truly sorry about this. It is just company policy.
Marcus Reid had never sat in a boardroom in his life. Now he was standing in the middle of one. He wore a jacket that did not fit him. He was surrounded by people who owned more buildings than he had ever set foot in. Every one of them was staring at him like he had just said something impossible. Because he had, only he was not the one who said it first. 30 seconds earlier, Victoria Whitfield had looked at a folder in her hands. She went completely still. Then she said the words that made her own attorney sit down without being asked to. "This man's father saved my father's life. 41 years ago, in a place not so different from the one you tried to destroy him in this month." Nobody in that room expected that. Not the lawyers, not the board, not Derek Combs, who had spent the last 3 weeks trying to bury Marcus Reid under his own worst moment. And not Marcus. He had walked into that boardroom believing the biggest thing he had ever done was help an old woman off a grocery store floor. To understand how all of this happened, you have to go back 3 weeks, back to a Tuesday night, a grocery store, and an old woman nobody else was willing to help. Marcus Reid was 34 years old. By his own count, he had been tired for about 10 of those years straight. He worked the overnight shift at a distribution warehouse off Mound Road. He loaded trucks from 11 at night until 7 in the morning. Then he drove home. He got his daughter up. He made her breakfast. He walked her 4 blocks to school. Then he tried to grab 3 or 4 hours of sleep before doing it all again. His daughter's name was Amara. She was 8 years old. She was sharp as anything. She had her mother's eyes. Her mother had left when Amara was 2. Marcus never once badmouthed her to their daughter. Not even on the nights he sat at the kitchen table doing math that never worked out. They lived in a 1-bedroom apartment on the 2nd floor of an old brick building. Marcus slept on the couch. He told Amara it was because he liked the couch better. She was 8. Not stupid. But she let him have the lie. Because some lies are just love wearing a disguise. That Tuesday, Marcus had $41 in his checking account. Rent was due in 6 days. It was going to cost him $950. He had already picked up 2 extra shifts that week. He was doing everything a man could reasonably do. It still was not going to be enough. He stopped at the grocery store on his way home from dropping Amara at his neighbor's place. Her name was Denise, and she watched Amara on nights Marcus could not find anyone else. He needed milk. He needed bread. He needed whatever was cheapest that could pass for dinner. He had no idea that in about 10 minutes, everything was going to change. Not because of anything he did for himself. Because of what he was about to do for a stranger. The self-checkout lanes were nearly empty, just Marcus, a stock clerk restocking a shelf near the front, and an elderly woman 2 lanes down, struggling to scan a bag of oranges that kept sliding off the small platform. Her name was Eleanor Whitfield, though Marcus did not know that yet. She was 79 years old. Small, white hair pulled back neatly, a wool coat that had seen better decades, but was cared for like it still mattered. She used a cane in her right hand. She carried a shopping basket in the crook of her left arm. Marcus noticed her the way he noticed most things. Quietly, he noticed nobody working there had bothered to help her. He was about to walk over when 2 young men came through the front doors. They were maybe 19 or 20. Loud, moving with the kind of swagger some young men use to convince themselves they are in control of a room. One of them bumped a display of soup cans hard enough to send 3 of them rolling. He laughed. Nobody laughed with him. They drifted toward the self-checkout lanes. One of them noticed Eleanor. "You need help there, old lady," he said. It was not really an offer. Eleanor did not flinch. "No, thank you. I'm managing." The second young man reached over and grabbed the strap of her purse. He yanked. She grabbed back on instinct. Her cane clattered to the floor. Her balance went sideways. Marcus was already moving before he finished deciding to move. He crossed the distance in 4 long strides. He caught Eleanor under the arm before she hit the ground. In the same motion, he put his other hand flat against the chest of the young man holding her purse strap. Not a punch, not a shove hard enough to be called violence, just a wall of a hand that said, without a word, "This is over now." "Let it go," Marcus said. His voice was low. It did not need to be loud. The young man's friend pulled at his sleeve. "Man, forget it. Let's go." For a second, the one holding the strap looked like he wanted to test Marcus. He looked at the size of him. He looked at the stillness in his face. Something in him decided against it. He dropped the strap. Both of them left, not running, but not slow either. The stock clerk stood frozen near the shelf, phone out. He had filmed the last 15 seconds without moving a muscle to help. Marcus knelt down. He gathered Eleanor's cane, her purse, and the bruised oranges. He set them gently back in her basket. "Are you hurt, ma'am?" "No," Eleanor said. Her hands were shaking, though her voice was steadier than she expected. "Thanks to you." He helped her finish checking out. He carried her bags to her car. Before she got in, she took his hand in both of hers. "What's your name, young man?" "Marcus. Marcus Reid." "Thank you, Marcus Reid. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," he said simply. Then he walked back inside for his milk and bread. His daughter still needed dinner. He had no idea the stock clerk's video was already being uploaded. Within 18 hours it would have 4 million views. He had no idea one of those views belonged to Victoria Whitfield, Eleanor's daughter. The video spread fast and strange, the way these things do. By Wednesday, strangers online had nicknamed Marcus the warehouse guardian. They never learned his real name. By Thursday, 3 local news vans had shown up at the grocery store trying to find him. Marcus knew none of it. He had no social media beyond an account he checked twice a year. He was working nights. He was sleeping days. He was drowning in the same 6-day countdown to rent he had been drowning in before any of it happened. He had done a small good thing on an ordinary Tuesday. As far as he knew, the world had gone right back to being exactly as hard as it was the day before. If you have ever done the right thing and felt like the world did not even notice, stay with this one, because what Marcus does not know yet is that 4 million people already have. Hit subscribe. The next 20 minutes of this story are going to test exactly how much that kind of character costs a man before it ever pays him back. On Friday, the eviction notice arrived. Not a warning, a real one, taped to his door, giving him until the end of the month. Marcus sat at the kitchen table that night after Amara had gone to bed. He stared at the paper. He let himself feel the full weight of how close to the edge he actually was. One bad week from losing the roof over his daughter's head. No family to call. No savings. Just a warehouse job that paid enough to survive and not $1 more. He did not hear Amara's door creak open behind him. "Are we moving again, Daddy?" Marcus turned fast. He folded the paper before she could read it, but she had already seen enough of it to understand. They had moved twice before in her short life. Both times fast. Both times scary. Both times ending in a smaller apartment than the one before. "We're okay, baby," he said. It was the kind of lie a father tells when he has not yet figured out how to make it true. "You always say that," Amara said quietly. She went back to bed without arguing. That somehow hurt more than if she had cried. Marcus sat alone with that a long time. He did not know that 4 million people had watched him be the kind of man this city desperately needed more of. He just knew that being a good man had never once, in his experience, paid the rent. Now his daughter was old enough to notice the gap between the two. Victoria Whitfield ran Whitfield Steel Group. Her grandfather had built it from a single foundry into one of the largest privately held steel operations in the Midwest. She was 42 years old, sharp, famously private about her personal life. What almost nobody outside the family knew was that the small woman in that grocery store video was her mother. Her assistant sent her the clip Wednesday morning. It was tagged simply, "Is this your mom?" Victoria nearly scrolled past it in the chaos of her morning. Then she saw her mother's coat, the one Eleanor had worn every winter since her husband passed 6 years earlier. Everything else on her desk stopped mattering. She called Eleanor immediately. "Mom, why didn't you tell me?" "And because I'm fine, Victoria. A very kind young man helped me. That's the whole story." It was not the whole story. Victoria wrote the man's name down on a legal pad. It was the same pad she used for board decisions worth tens of millions of dollars. She underlined it twice. She told herself she just wanted to thank him. She did not yet know her cousin Derek had watched the same video. He was already building a very different use for it. Derek Combs was Eleanor's late husband's nephew. Family in name more than spirit. He had spent the better part of a decade circling the edges of the Whitfield fortune. He ran a few failed businesses. Eleanor had quietly bailed him out more than once. He nursed a private conviction that he deserved a far larger seat at the family table. When Derek saw the video, His first reaction was not concern. It was opportunity. He had been trying for over a year to convince a small circle of family lawyers that Eleanor was no longer capable of managing her own affairs. He wanted a court-appointed conservatorship, one structured to put him in a position of real financial control. Now he had 4 million views of an old woman nearly robbed in public. He met with his attorney Thursday. He began drafting a petition. Vulnerable elderly woman, living alone, unable to protect herself in public, in need of court-ordered oversight. He also did something he had not done with his first attempt a year earlier. He hired a private investigator, not to look into his aunt this time, into the man in the video. If a stranger's testimony was going to be used against him, Derek wanted to know exactly how to discredit that stranger first. Engagement question. If the person trying to destroy someone you love had already started digging up ammunition against the one man defending them, how far would you go to protect that man's name before it ever reached a courtroom? Drop your answer below. Marcus Reid is about to find out his past is not as buried as he thought. It took Victoria's team 3 days to track Marcus down. What she found surprised her. She had pictured someone rougher around the edges, someone loud, looking to be noticed for what he had done. Instead, she found a modest brick apartment building, a man in a faded work jacket carrying groceries up an outdoor staircase, a little girl with braided hair calling down, "Daddy, did you get the cereal?" Victoria sat in her car a full minute before getting out. She introduced herself. She explained the elderly woman he had helped was her mother. "Is she okay?" Marcus asked immediately. Not a question about himself, just is she okay? That single question told Victoria more about Marcus Reid than any background check could. They talked on the steps almost half an hour. Victoria learned about the warehouse shifts, about Amara, about the eviction notice on his door that he had told nobody about. Not from shame, because there was nobody left to tell. She learned Marcus once worked 3 years in industrial logistics before the company folded. He coordinated shipments and managed a small team. It was almost exactly the experience her own logistics division was short-staffed in. She asked if he would be willing to testify at a family hearing about what he witnessed. Marcus did not hesitate. "Whatever your mother needs, yes." He did not ask what was in it for him. Victoria noted that too. She quietly began making calls about his future that had nothing to do with the hearing at all. She had come to say thank you. She left with the beginning of a plan. She had no idea her cousin was already 3 steps ahead of her in a very different direction. The private investigator's report landed on Derek's desk on a Tuesday, exactly 1 week before the hearing. Marcus Reid, age 19, arrested for assault following an altercation at a residence in southwest Detroit. Charges later dropped. No conviction on record. The report did not explain why. The investigator had not bothered to dig that deep. Derek did not need the why. He only needed the word arrest sitting next to Marcus's name. He also learned, through a source at the freight company, exactly where Marcus worked now. The warehouse's largest client happened to be a logistics partner Derek had done business with years earlier. One phone call, framed as a concern about liability given Marcus's, quote, criminal history, was enough. Marcus was quietly pulled off the schedule for the following week, pending an internal review. Marcus found out on a Wednesday morning. He was standing in the warehouse break room. His shift supervisor told him he was suspended without pay, while the company looked into, in the supervisor's words, some concerns that came up. Marcus did not know where the concerns came from. He only knew that his $1 less than desperate life had just lost the one paycheck holding it together. 6 days before the eviction deadline, he had already been counting down. He sat in his car in the warehouse parking lot for 20 minutes before he could make himself drive home. If you have ever watched someone try to punish a good man for a piece of his past, he never even got the chance to explain. Stay with this. Marcus is about to decide if doing the right thing again is worth losing everything he has left. Like this video if you are still with him. It is about to get a lot harder before it gets better. Marcus told Victoria about the suspension the next day. His voice was flat. It was the voice of a man who had run out of places to put his anger. "I don't understand," he said. "I helped your mother. Now I can't feed my own kid." Victoria's first instinct was fury, quiet and controlled, the kind that made her far more dangerous in a boardroom than any raised voice ever could. She asked him directly about the arrest. Marcus did not flinch from it. "I was 19. My mother's boyfriend at the time put his hands on her. I stopped him. He pressed charges to scare me off testifying against him for what he'd already done to her before that night. The case got dropped because the prosecutor believed my mother, not him. I've never talked about it because nobody ever asked, and no employer in 10 years ever needed to know. Victoria sat with that for a long moment. That's not a criminal history, Marcus. That's the same story as the grocery store. You've been doing this exact thing your whole life. But knowing that did not fix the eviction notice. It did not put Marcus back on the schedule. That Saturday, 2 days before the hearing, the landlord's notice went from warning to final. Marcus and Amara spent the afternoon packing boxes. Not because they had somewhere to go, because the apartment manager had made clear the locks would change Monday morning regardless. Amara worked quietly beside him. She folded her clothes into a garbage bag because they did not own enough suitcases. At one point, she looked up at him and asked the question that nearly broke him in half. Is it because you helped that lady? Is this because of me telling everyone my daddy's a hero? Marcus knelt down in front of her, boxes half packed around them. He told her the only true thing he had left. No, baby, this is not your fault. And it's not because I helped her. Sometimes doing right by somebody costs you before it ever pays you back. That doesn't mean it wasn't the right thing to do. He did not fully believe it himself in that moment. He said it anyway, because she needed to hear it, and because some lies are just love wearing a disguise. Except this time it was not entirely a lie. The hearing was held Monday morning, the same day Marcus's locks were supposed to change. In a conference room at the family attorney's office, Derek arrived confident. A folder of exhibits ready, including the private investigator's report. He spoke first about his concern for his aunt, about the dangers of an elderly woman shopping alone, about the recent public attack proving exactly the risk he had been warning the family about. Then, when Victoria introduced Marcus as a witness, Derek made his move. Before this man testifies about my aunt's safety, Derek said, sliding a copy of the report across the table, the family should know exactly who is being asked to speak on her behalf. An arrest for assault, a man with a documented history of violence. The room went quiet in a different way than it had the first time Marcus stood in front of them. Eleanor's face tightened. Victoria's attorney glanced at her, unsure how she wanted to handle it. Marcus stood up before anyone else could speak for him. I was 19 years old, he said. His voice was steady despite the ground shifting under him. My mother's boyfriend beat her in our kitchen. While I stood in the doorway, I stopped him with my hands. That was the only tool I had at 19, with no money for anything else. He pressed charges to keep me quiet. The case was dropped because a prosecutor looked at the truth and believed her, not him. He looked directly at Derek. You dug up the worst moment of my life and left out the reason it happened. The same way you took the worst moment of Eleanor's life and left out the reason it turned out okay. That's not an accident. That's a pattern. I think everyone in this room just watched you do it twice. For the first time, Derek had no immediate answer. Then Victoria's forensic accountant presented the second piece of the morning, the transaction records. A shell company, staggered transfers totaling just over $240,000, quietly pulled from an account Derek had access to as a minor co-trustee. Derek's attorney requested a recess. Derek said nothing at all. The confidence he had walked in with was completely gone. Eleanor reached over and took her daughter's hand. Then she looked at Marcus with something that was not just gratitude anymore. It was recognition. If watching a man turn his worst moment into the very proof of his character just hit you, comment the word truth below. What happens in the next few minutes is going to make everything in this story click into place. And if you are not subscribed yet, now is the time. The reveal coming up is the reason this story exists. After the petition was formally withdrawn, and Derek's attorney requested a private conversation about the missing funds, Victoria asked the room to stay seated a moment longer. She had a folder in her hands, one her research team had put together while investigating Marcus's background, for reasons that had nothing to do with Derek's attack on him. When my team looked into your history, Marcus, they found the arrest before I did. I want you to know, I never once believed it defined you. But they found something else too, something none of us expected. She opened the folder and turned it so Eleanor could see it first. 41 years ago, my father was 23 years old. He was working a loading dock in this same city, 3 months behind on everything he owned. This company did not exist yet in any form worth mentioning. He got jumped outside that dock one night by 3 men over a debt that was not even his. A young warehouse worker pulled those men off him and stood over my father until they left. My father never learned that man's full name. He only ever wrote down what the man told him that night. 3 words. Marcus's father said the exact same thing to my father that Marcus said to my mother, 41 years later. Victoria's voice caught, just slightly, for the first time in the entire hearing. He said, "Let it go." The room went completely silent. I had my team pull the old employment record my father kept in his personal files, out of habit, because he always said he owed that man everything and never got the chance to repay it before he passed. The name on that record is Robert Reid. Marcus felt the room tilt. "My father's name," he said quietly. "He died when I was 12. He never talked about that night. Not once." "He probably never knew who he saved," Victoria said. "Just like you had no idea, 3 weeks ago, that the woman in that grocery store was the wife of the man your own father pulled off the ground 4 decades earlier." Eleanor rose slowly from her chair. She crossed the room. She took Marcus's hands in both of hers, exactly the way she had in that grocery store parking lot. "Your father saved my husband's life before this company built a single one of these buildings," Eleanor said, "and 41 years later, without either of you knowing it, his son saved mine. That is not a coincidence, Marcus Reid. That is a debt this family has owed for 4 decades, and I intend to see it paid in full, starting today." Victoria turned to the room. Whitfield Steel Group has an opening in logistics operations. It pays $68,000 a year, full benefits, and it starts with his experience, not his resume. The company is covering his rent through the end of this year, effective immediately, and reversing the suspension my cousin engineered against him, with full back pay. There is also an education trust being established for his daughter. She paused. But that is not the unthinkable part. The unthinkable part is this. My family is placing Marcus Reid on the small advisory committee that oversees how this company treats the people my grandfather always said built it. The ones on the floor, the ones on the dock, the ones this family forgot to thank for 41 years. Not as a symbol, with a vote. Marcus started his new position the following Monday. His first paycheck cleared old medical debt he had been quietly chipping away at for 2 years. His second, he used to take Amara school shopping without once checking a price tag. It was so unfamiliar to both of them that she asked halfway through the store if something was wrong, because her father usually checked every price twice. "No," Marcus told her. He was smiling in a way she had not seen in a long time. "Nothing's wrong, baby. Things are just different now." Eleanor visited 2 weeks later. She insisted on bringing dessert herself. She waved off help on the outdoor staircase, cane in hand, moving at her own pace, on her own terms. Before she left, she pulled Amara aside and pressed a small orange-shaped pin into her hand. "Your father is the reason I still get to make my own choices," Eleanor told her. "And your grandfather, who you never got to meet, is the reason my husband lived long enough to build the company that just changed your family's life. Kindness doesn't disappear, sweetheart. It just waits for the right moment to come back around." Amara looked up at her father that night. The pin was still in her small hand. She asked the question that had been sitting in her since the day they packed the garbage bags. "Was it worth it, Daddy? Even the scary part?" Marcus thought about the eviction notice, the suspension, his father's name on a 41-year-old employment record he never knew existed. "Yes," he said, "every bit of it. Sometimes you don't get to see why until the very end. Doesn't mean it wasn't worth it the whole way through." Derek Combs was removed from any position of financial authority within the family trust. The missing $240,000 was referred to the family's legal counsel for full recovery. Marcus never went looking for gratitude. He never asked what he was owed. Not the day he stopped 2 strangers in a grocery store. Not the day he learned his own father had done the exact same thing 41 years before him, without either of them ever knowing the debt would come due 2 generations later. Some kindness pays you back in a week. Some of it takes 41 years, but the story of Marcus Reid proves it never actually disappears. If this story showed you that the good you do never really vanishes, it just waits for its moment, comment the word "returned" below, and tell us which reveal hit you the hardest. The boardroom, the hearing, or the ending. And if you want more stories like Marcus and Eleanor's, ordinary people whose quiet integrity ends up changing everything. Subscribe now, because we've got a lot more of them coming.